introduce you?
Yep, sounds good.
I need to get up there because I started.
That's right. You started. I was like, you want to start? I think that you talk first.
We'll wait till this song's over. Good evening. Good evening. Please, thank you. I wish to welcome all of you here to our annual for rendezvous event that we offer here at the Senior Center. We do it 2 nights, the first Saturday of rendezvous and the last. Pioneer Stories Dinner Theater. So thank you for coming. I'm Judy Weimer. I'm the co-chairman of this event. My co-chairman, James, who anybody that's been involved with the Senior Center a long time ago remembers James, but he was unable to be here due to the illness of his father. But the person that filled in for him this year, and if you ever see her, be sure to thank her, is Bobby Taylor, who works here at the center as the special events staff person, and she filled in for James, and I really appreciate that, because even though a lot of people wear different hats, I couldn't handle that many. Many thanks to all who have made tonight possible. It takes a lot of people. First and foremost, I want to thank our speakers, our main attraction, for coming tonight and volunteering to be our speakers tonight. And of course, our staff in the kitchen for preparing our meals, and we hope to introduce them later tonight. And to the other staffs here at the Senior Center. They're a wonderful crew that chip in and help wherever needed. One of them is back there serving tables. So the staff here really chips in and does whatever needs to be done, and we really appreciate that. And a special thanks to our Anchorage Senior Activity Center manager, Rebecca Parker. If she weren't willing to support this wholeheartedly, which she does, we wouldn't have events like this, and because of her leadership, we have one of the best, if not the best, senior centers in the United States. So I really believe that. I've heard a lot of people who go outside and they can't find anything that matches it. At this time, I wish to introduce to you our Mistress-of-Ceremonies. Her name is MALORIE SPREEN, and she's the Program and Operations Director of our center. Let me tell you a little about her. Her career and volunteer life is concentrated on senior services. She enjoys more than anything getting to know her community. In the past, she has served on many boards as Director of Social Accountabilities for Wesley Homes, Legacy Foundation Director, overseeing the community gardens and senior services in Des Moines, Washington. And she was the Vice President of the South End Senior Care Coalition in Seattle. She also worked as the Community Outreach Director for the Maple Valley Creative Arts Center and Community Engagement Officer for the Des Moines Art Commission. Serving her community, you can tell just from that, is her passion. She moved to Alaska in October of 2015 from Seattle and plans to stay, and we sure hope she does. She graduated from the University of Puget Sound with a degree in sociology, English, and a focus in food and hunger issues. She is also a certified cognitive stimulation instructor. I'm not sure what that means, but you'll have to ask her, okay? MALORIE is overjoyed to be able to call Anchorage her home and to participate in the celebration of its history this evening. We are honored and pleased to have MALORIE SPREEN as our Mistress of Ceremonies. Please welcome her.
Thank you so much to Judy. I'd first like to start out on a note of thanks. So Judy Weimer and James have worked so hard on this event, and she has a commitment that is unmatched. And she is also the most talented volunteer that I know. I'm sure there's a few people in this room that know that. So I'd really just like to give Judy a round of applause to start this evening out. We are so thankful that you've joined us here for this event. It is always a great time. We'd also like to recognize that we're celebrating our 35th year, which is pretty incredible. We are very, very excited. We'll have more events this year to celebrate that. I'd like to introduce our head table and our speakers. Our first speaker is Tim Middleton, and he is joined by his wife, Joyce. Our second speaker is John Speaker. Third will be Betty Arnett, and fourth will be Deborah FAITHROSE, and she is joined by Russ Conover. I'd also like to introduce our Rondi royalty who are here this evening. We've got our 2008 Rondi King and Queen Regents, Dwayne and Diane Hefferling. Would you like to wave? Yay. And I'll announce them, but I don't think everyone is present yet. We've got Rondi's Lord Trapper, Bob Lester. Rondi Queen Birgitta Kress, Rondi Princesses Olivia Larson and Genevieve Guthrie, Rondi's Heritage Ambassador Brianna Stein, Rondi Bear, I didn't think that we let bears into this event, but I guess we are, he'll be here soon, is Layla. Oh, they just arrived, so we'll have to welcome them in with a round of applause. Everyone's looking behind me, much more interesting things. Rondi Legacy is Jolene Gale. Rondi Chaperones, I like that they use the word chaperones, is Angela Capinos and Cody Bellatrami. And the Rondi Escort and Manager is Amy Hawkinson. Yay, we can welcome them in. Rondi Royalty, everyone. They were really just waiting to make an entrance. Yes. We can tell. And your seats are right this way. Thank you. Now, do we have any political dignitaries present? I apologize if I did not recognize you. Feel free to raise your hands. All right, it is election season, so they might be sitting on their hands. Are there any current board members present? I know we've got one in the back of the room. Our current board president, Chris Warren, is here. Yes, we can clap for Chris. He does so much for us. Are there any past board members present? I know we've got a long lineage of wonderfully dedicated people that aren't here tonight except for Chris. Thank you, Chris. And thank you so much to everyone who has served on ASAC's board. It is a big job that they make look really easy. And I'd also like to recognize any of our staff that are present. If you could wave, I know we've got a bunch of us in the room. Thank you so much. Oh, yeah. We all love for Rondi. There's so much going on. We love it. And we'd really like to thank our volunteers that are here this evening. We've got a lot of them, so thank you so much to all of our wonderful volunteers. We've got a couple key clubs here. We've got some community members here. They really make this event what it is, so thank you for that. Our music tonight is provided by our three talented musicians, Delyn Gleason, Nathaniel Gleason, and Carl Gleason. Yes, please stand. They are so talented, they won't tell you, but they play multiple instruments. It's incredible. And I believe, Nathaniel, are you going off to college? Did we hear a rumor? Is this like your last year with us? Yeah. Oh, well, that's okay. You'll come back. We'll make sure you get back here. And now, if everyone could please stand and join us in singing the Alaska Flag Song, led by Carl Gleason. The words are located, if you're like me and haven't memorized the whole thing, inside of your program.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. 8 stars of gold on a field of blue, Alaska's flag, may it mean to you the blue of the sea, the evening sky, the mountain lakes and the flowers nearby, the gold of the early sourdough's dream, the precious gold of the hills and streams, the brilliant stars in the northern sky, the Bear, the Dipper, and shining high, the great North Star with its steady light over land and sea, a beacon bright, Alaska's flag to Alaskans dear, the simple flag of Alaska's frontier.
From the smiles and the laughter and all this noise, I can gather that we've enjoyed our dinner. Yeah? Yay! Well, keep the applause going because I'd like to introduce our chefs. We've got our head chef, Christopher Knight. We've got Tim Washington and Will Huru, and they cook for us tonight and every day of the week, especially during Ferrandi. These guys are incredible. Please do give them a round of applause. All right, you're free. Thank you, God. They are just the nicest guys, and if you come any day of the week, we've got a restaurant that's open from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m., and the pastries are dangerous. You're getting your desserts now, so we've got cheesecake. That's just a taste of what we can do here. I would like to invite Judy up. She's going to give us a brief history of the Anchorage Senior Center.
Could I have your attention, please? Thank you. This is the 35th anniversary of the Anchorage Senior Center, or Anchorage Senior Activity Center. And I was asked to come up with a history. I didn't make it up. Don't get me wrong. They had a file with information, which I went through. I also have been involved here at the Senior Center for 35 years, so I have some personal knowledge. And another source that I used that talked to me about it over the years was my mother. She was one of the original people who got this center going and was the first appointed president of this center. So I do have people that give me a lot of information. So please listen. It was interesting. I learned some things. I've learned some things since that if I rewrite this later, I know other people like Jewel Jones to get a hold of. I'll begin. The Anchorage Senior Activity Center is celebrating its 35th anniversary of service in the Anchorage Bowl area this year, 2018. How did we get here? Let's go back to 1970s. With the rising population of seniors in the Anchorage area, there was a recognizable need for senior services. The late Rose Palmquist and key seniors living in Anchorage formed a committee to look into establishing a senior center here. Their goal was to establish a facility so that seniors could maintain an active and healthy lifestyle. When this idea was presented to the city planners, their answer was, well, you can use the old schoolhouse on 3rd Avenue. That did not go over very well at all. It was not accepted as an adequate facility, and this offer spurred the original group to acquire a state-of-the-art facility as their mission. The governor, the senators, and representatives in Juneau were contacted, and support was gained for the Anchorage Senior Center in its present location. It was established as a result of the Older American Act that was passed in 1965. Anchorage had facilities for children, like the Fairview Rec Center and the Spenard Rec Center, and the founding members felt seniors needed a place to go too. They felt that if kids could have a center, so should the senior citizens of Anchorage. In 1976, the Municipal Senior Advisory Commission was established. 2 years later, in 1978, $800,000 was appropriated for the Anchorage Senior Center from a state bond that was issued. Governor Sullivan, mayor of Anchorage at the time, appointed the management board in May of 1981. The officers were Florence Orr, president, my mother, Gerald Markey, vice president, Mary Carl. How many went to Anchorage High School? They recognize that name. She was our math teacher if you went there. Mary Carl was secretary, and Nona Vickers, treasurer. There were other members that you may recognize. There was Alfred Argon, Clarence Coleman, Laverne Hill, Tessie Cardanoff, Harold Maxwell, Esther McGilligan, and Martha Waldrop. The building was scheduled for completion in July 1981 and was completely paid for before construction began. However, during construction, a fire totally destroyed the half-completed structure. Luckily, the project was covered by insurance, and reconstruction started immediately. The center was officially opened on March of 1983, with normal operations commencing on April 4th, 1983. It officially opened with 400 members. It was originally named the Anchorage Center Incorporated. It is a non-profit corporation under the IRS 501c3 standard. This beautiful brick building is centrally located between downtown Anchorage and Midtown. It is situated on 5 acres of land with ample parking, although I questioned that the other day, but ample parking plus people mover, bus service, and Anchor rides, door-to-door transportation. The center and the surrounding grounds are owned by the municipality of Anchorage. The center is accredited by the National Institute of Senior Centers and the National Council on Aging, something that, believe it or not, less than 200 senior centers in the entire United States have achieved that. So it's quite a compliment to this center that it has passed all these inspections and met all these standards that nationally to get accredited are needed. Programs were established and have continued to flourish over the past 35 years, with health and fitness a top priority for members. Some of the earliest programs that were established and still exist today, 35 years later, were the health fair, arts and craft classes, income tax assistance, Thursday night bingo, Wednesday afternoon social hour, the Endowment Trust Fund, and monthly birthday parties, which were started as a Girl Scout Gold Award project by Diane Ware. Her parents are here tonight, Judy and Diane. Thank you. As the years went by, the fitness program became so large that exercise classes were held right here in the ballroom. The craft classes and art room became overcrowded with seniors and their supplies. So in 1998, a fund drive was started to pay for the expansion of the center. A new wing was added in 2002. This was to accommodate the growth in programs as well as the number of people in Anchorage over 55 years of age. Also added was the art sculpture made with glass beads in our front lobby. It is called the Migration. Next came the Arctic Rose restaurant expansion in 2005. This substantially increased the size of the kitchen and enhanced the food service. This made it possible for the center to get a contract with Kids Corps Head Start to provide meals for 360 children at 5 school sites on a weekly basis. Now, the numbers may be slightly different this year, but that's what the history told me. Betsy Grazer was the first executive director of the Anchorage Senior Center, followed by David Herndon, Billy Lewis, Roseanne Alexander, Celeste Benson, Kathy Lee, and presently Rebecca Parker. The center provides today a broad range of group and individual activities and services that respond to the needs and interests of older adults, families, and caregivers. The mission of the Anchorage Senior Activity Center is to enhance the quality of life of seniors by managing a well-equipped facility with skilled staff who promote fitness, health, and social interaction in a wide range of activities, programs, and services. Happy 35th anniversary, Anchorage Senior Activity Center.
Thank you so much, Judy. It really is a celebration, and thank you to everyone who put in so much work and love to make sure that this place exists. It really is a well-functioning building with a great staff, amazing volunteers, and I'm just so proud to be a part of it. So thank you to everyone who's come tonight. You are all supporters of the Anchorage Senior Center, so thank you. I'd now like to welcome our first speaker, who is Tim Middleton, and a little history on Tim. Tim's parents were born and raised in New Jersey, a long way from here. They met and were married in 1932. His dad had a dream from boyhood to go to Alaska, and his dream was realized in 1948. By this time, there were 5 children, and his mother was pregnant with her 6th. They traveled across the country, which took 4 weeks. Arriving in Anchorage, they stayed until their 6th child was born in July in the old Providence Hospital. They decided they wanted to live in Homer. To get there, they had to take a barge. There were no roads to Homer in 1948. It took them 4 days. Tim's dad filed on a homestead in September of 1948. They were able to be in a log cabin, which was 14 feet by 20 feet. Now, I'm going to let everybody absorb that with 6 children and 2 adults by March of 1949. The homestead was located off the road system, so it was necessary to have homeschooling in the cabin. There was no electricity and no running water for several years. It was largely a subsistence lifestyle. The 7th child in the family was born in 1950. Tim was able to go to the University of Alaska in 1961 and followed that with attending Hastings Law School in San Francisco. He financed all of his education by working construction projects throughout Alaska between 1961 and 1967. Tim got married in 1968 and then had to fulfill his military obligation, which he completed in 1971. He and his wife then settled in Anchorage, where they raised 2 children, wonderful daughters of their own. At 35, Tim started running. He got hooked, which led him to run a lot of marathons, 61 in all. And he didn't have 6 kids to run away from, so he just did it for fun. He also ran 8 ultra marathons. He's been active in helping with ski races and running races over the years. And after a long career of various legal work in Anchorage, Tim retired. He and his wife now enjoy their grandkids and some traveling. Please help me welcome Tim Middleton.
I'm cheating a little bit, but I'm going to do this first. The Alaska legislature honored our mother, Lou Middleton, upon her passing. And I wanted to talk about her, and all this information, I can just read all that out and as follows. They called her Lulu, parenthesis Lou Middleton, the 25th state legislature honors pioneer homesteader Lou Middleton and joined her family and friends in celebrating a long and full life of 97 years. Lou was born on September 14th, 2009, to Herbert and Mary Ware in Sharptown, New Jersey. An infant bout with polio left her with paralysis in her right leg, but he used a robust life on her Quaker's parents' tomato farm near Woodstown, New Jersey. She graduated from Woodstown High School and continued on to Rutgers Business School and then went to work at DuPont Chemical Company in Salem. There she met Henry Middleton. The two were married in 1932. Lou did not know at the time that Henry had a childhood dream to come to Alaska. When he suggested it, she said no. In 1939, they came to the West Coast to live, and I think he was trying to have an angle to go up to Alaska. And in 1944, they returned to New Jersey. On the way out, by the way, so they picked up 2 kids, and then they had a 4th one in Seattle. That was me. After the death of Lou's father, Henry suggested they take her inheritance and buy his house for the family in New Jersey. But Lou said, "No, Henry, it's time to go to Alaska." So in May of 1948, they got rid of this real fast. So in May of 1948, Henry and Lou, 7 months pregnant, Lou was pregnant, picked up their 5 kids and traveled up the Alpine Highway to a homestead in Alaska. They settled in the Fritz Creek area near Homer. Together, Lou and Henry built a tiny log cabin and raised 7 children. Henry worked as an electrician on bush jobs, leaving Lou and the children to manage the homestead. When her kids were young, she would bake up 9 loaves of bread every 2 days, and it was great. hot bread, put some oleo on it, and oh man, it's good. And always had a knitting project going. I might say, I wouldn't be surprised if she had a couple hundred socks and a couple hundred hats and everything. I mean, she was amazing. And I woke up anyway. When her kids were young, she would bake up the 9 loaves of bread every 2 days, and always had a knitting project going as well. She could not participate in hiking excursion, but that didn't stop Lou from having fun. She would take anyone on for a lively game of pinochle, Scrabble, or checkers. Yeah, she was tough. Lou volunteered at the Pratt Museum for 20 years after Dad died, and was always ready to greet visitors or answer any question with a smile. Lou was well known for her wonderful homestead soups, pies, and bread. As was her tradition, Grandma Lou would welcome and set a place at a table for anyone who stopped by to say hello. Her family remembers her as a devoted wife, mother, and eternally lovable grandmother. She will never forget her lovely smile, I will, her patience, or her devilish sense of humor. The 25th Alaska State Legislature joins family and friends in celebrating the life of Lou Middleton, a gracious and great lady. Signed, John Harris, Paul Seaton, Gary Stevens, and Lita Green. So, I'm still. I just took some of that out of that for this. So, we talked about how they got the money to go to Alaska. I might say that they did that. Had the estate cleaned, and I mean they were gone. And they had a 1948 Plymouth sedan, a utility trailer, and packed items they believed they would be useful for their new adventure. There were big choices to make as to what would be needed, and they couldn't part with it. It included a cedar chest, silverware, blankets, warm clothes, sewing machine, very important, washing machine, which could be converted to a gas operation, and an iron were also packed. At last, on May 8th, the family, we're going over this, but this is when Pam had just been born in 46. And Jeff was on the way, coming up on the highway. And that was number 6. Now, you think maybe that was all. She was only still 40-some, so. They found a nice piece of land out 10 miles from Homer. And you probably know the place, out at the end of the road now, or practically. And, but Mom got pregnant again. And this is where it comes into the problem in Alaska in those days, when you just didn't have a doctor. And she said, "Oh, I'm pregnant again." So they went over to Seward on gravel roads, all the way over, and the doctor said, "Don't think so. It's going to be another 3 weeks." So back again, gravel highway, and I don't know, it took 7 or 8 hours. And about a week later, Mom said, "This is for real." So Dad said, "All right, if you 3 boys, you take a car and go get a nurse," and because it's a small room. And we went, and a lady named what's her name? Anyway, I knew her name a minute ago. And so she was to come out and do the business. I'm sure she wanted to do it. She got back to the house. Dad had everything in. It's all done. I'm sure with a lot of instructions from his wife. So that's Cindy over there with that white. Yeah. You see, it came out. She came out all right, I guess. So another, I guess I'm not out of time yet, but there were other things that happened. During the early spring, we would go out to Anchor Point to get fish. Well, this time, at 1951, I know it was 51 because Cindy was just still a baby. And so there was a bear walking around our cabin, and I think there was some fish stuff stored somewhere, and he was trying to dig it up. And he's kind of walking around, and then he heard this something going on in a crib. And everything was fine except she started to talk. And the bear got excited. So it was a kind of a window. It wouldn't, he could go right through it, you know. And Jane got upset. And Jane is over there somewhere. So she picked her up and shut her up, and which is a good thing for her. And this is where it gets kind of dicey, because Mom was insistent that she was going to get that bear. The bear walked around out in front of our small kitchen, and there's a window that goes out like this, like on a hinge. So she says she gets the 30-06, which she has never fired. And she goes here with this weapon, and she has a rod over here pushing the window out, And she's down here like this with a 30-06, and she finally gets to where she wants to shoot. And what came out of that was a big black eye. It got in the paper, and the bear got away without anything going on. So that was, Cindy caused a lot of trouble there in the early years. So, and I might say I'm really proud of, we've had, we had young kids. The main people, the people like myself and Cindy and Jane, but the kids that have come after them are just super kids. And that homestead in which Jane just loves everybody, all those little kids, and it's quite a herd. and everybody's doing well, and I don't know whether this is 20 minutes. Can I talk some more? I think not. But it's been quite a life, I think, for us and for me, and it was wonderful.
Thank you so much, Tim. You did really well. This was almost a window, and there was almost a bear over there, and I'm really glad I wasn't your mother. Thank you so much for sharing that. Our second speaker tonight is Betty Arnett. Betty is originally from Knoxville. She obtained a bachelor's in education from the University of Tennessee. Upon graduation in 1952, she accepted the position of housemother at the Jesse Lee home in Seward, Alaska. That experience is in her recently published book, 22 and the Mother of 11. Her book is available for sale from her tonight, actually. After her marriage to Russell Arnett, an Anchorage attorney, Betty began teaching in Anchorage at the old North Star Elementary School in 1954. She continued teaching until her retirement in 1993. Her last teaching assignment was at Government Hill Elementary School in the Spanish immersion program. Betty created teaching training tapes on teaching kindergarten, for which she received a 1971 Alaska Press Club Award. She also wrote and produced 2 videotapes relating to the philosophy of the late minister and college instructor of comparative religions at Alaska Pacific University. Betty was a member of Governor Egan's advisory board on drugs as well. She is also a past executive director of the Alaska World Affairs Council. Betty is presently writing a sequel to her book, 22 and the Mother of 11. Betty and her husband, Russ, raised 3 children, April, Heather, and Hans, who all reside here in Anchorage. Please join me in welcoming Betty.
Thank you. When I was a little girl, about 8 or 9 years old, we had a special aunt who used to come and visit us. And when she came, she insisted on listening to the soap operas over the radio. And she would invite me to sit beside her and listen to those stories. Well, our favorite was called Hilltop House, and it was a wonderful story about a children's home sitting on a hill outside of a large city. The amazing thing about this home is that they had a young matron who, of course, was beautiful, and of course had many handsome suitors. But the most amazing thing about her was that all she had to do to get those kids to do anything they had to do was to love them. Well, At the end of one of those episodes, I looked up into the face of my Aunt Ann and I said, "That's what I want to do when I grow up." Well, I did grow up. And at the age of 22, I did work on a children's home that sat on a hill outside the city of Seward. I did not know it at the time, but I had come to work to the oldest and longest running home for children in all of Alaska. The Jesse Lee Home is its name, and today it is 128 years old. It began in 1890 out in the Aleutians in the village of Unalaska, and it didn't come to Seward until 1925. Well, neither did I know that the Jesse Lee Home had received some notoriety because a little boy of age 13, Benny Benson, had won a contest to design the Alaska flag while he was living at the home in Seward. And the Alaska flag flew for the very first time on July the 9th, 1927, on the grounds of the Jesse Lee Home in Seward. Now that was 27 years before I arrived at Jesse Lee Home. Because of the great 1964 Alaska earthquake, only a shell of the boys' building in which I lived with my 11 little boys, and there they are on this poster behind me. And by the way, that's when I was 22. The boys' building is just a shell now, and it stands right next to another building that is still just a shell. The girls' building is gone completely. But Jesse Lee Home did not die with the big earthquake. It exists today right here in Anchorage on Abbott Road with a very different service for children. Their program is now one of therapy for troubled children who can no longer live with their families, and their goal is to treat them professionally and get them back into their families as soon as possible. I first met my boys in August of 1952. I had arrived on a small plane from Anchorage just as they had returned to the home for lunch from their first day of school, of that school year. They were 6, 7, and 8 years of age. Each of them had a parent somewhere living in Alaska who could no longer take care of them. So they weren't really orphans. Many longed for the day when they could return to those homes. Some of their parents had tuberculosis and were living nearby in the TB stand in Seward. We did not have the Alaska Native Hospital up here in Anchorage at the time. Well, some of the children were offspring of GIs who had taken advantage of the young Native girls and left them behind. Some had lost their mothers, and their dads were commercial fishing far, far away from Seward. Some had lost their dads, and their mothers had no means to take care of them. A few were taken from their parents because of neglect. Until I arrived, Rachel Yokel, the assistant to the superintendent, had been taking care of my group of boys who were labeled the C boys, C meaning the letter C. Minutes before I was to meet them, a water fight had broken out in the boys' bathroom, And Rachel is saying, "That's enough of that. Miss Epps, your new house mother, has just arrived. You have just enough time to come out into the hall and meet her before the bell rings for lunch." "Where is she?" asked a wide-eyed little boy. "What does she look like?" Came a second question. "Well, come out into the hall and see for yourself." With wide grins, the small throng of boys followed Rachel. "Miss Epps, these are the C boys, or some of them. This is Willie and Floyd, the 2 first graders. This is Carl, Ben, and Alvin, and that is Max bringing up the rear. A bevy of curious little native boys and one Caucasian made me the center of their attention. Well, hello. I'm happy to meet you all." Numerous greetings came at the same time. "Hi, hello, hi. Miss Epps is from Tennessee." "Tennessee? Where is that?" asked one. "Well, Tennessee is a long way from here," I replied, not knowing how far their knowledge of geography extended. "They talk like that in Tennessee?" "Well, Tennessee is in the southern United States. Yes, they talk like Miss Epps in a southern accent." "Funny," he responded. He obviously found the sounds strange. "Better get your hands washed for lunch if you haven't already," said Rachel to the boys. So some of the boys, Willie and Floyd stayed behind with me. I assumed these were the 2 youngest boys in the dorm. "What'd she say your name was?" asked Floyd with a big friendly grin. "Epps, Miss Epps. Can you say that?" "Funny name," he laughed. "Miss Epps," they both responded. I smiled, assuming that was probably as close as they were going to get, and actually, it was. "How come you talk like that?" asked Willie. Well, my urge was to reply, "And how come you talk like that?" However, in my new role as a mother figure, I knew such a response would be inappropriate. "Everyone talks this way where I come from." "Tennessee?" "Yes." "I'm from Nome," announced Floyd, determined to get into the conversation. "Well, that's a long way, too, from here, isn't it?" I asked. "Yeah." Floyd pointed at Willie. "But he's not from Nome. I'm from Unga," said Willie, making the announcement before Floyd had a chance. With those facts quickly disposed of, Willie moved on to the important stuff. "How long you gonna stay?" His question took me by surprise. He had emphasized the "you," implying that the previous house mothers hadn't stayed that very long. "Why, 3 years," I said, searching his big sparkling brown eyes for a response. And suddenly the realization hit me that the care of this little native boy was all mine. And maybe we wouldn't be ready to part with each other after 3 years. "Well, maybe 5, I added on impulse. 5 years? Wow, beamed Willie, walking away as though he had just received the best news in the world. The loud noise of the ringing lunch bell jarred me from the warm glow I was enjoying from Willie's response. A scurry of rapidly moving feet could be heard all around, down the hall, from stairs above, and more boys coming through the front door. Suddenly, the boys were everywhere, in all ages, shapes, and sizes. And now it was lunchtime, and I was about to be introduced to two items of which I had never partaken in Tennessee at the table. At this point, I was seated as a guest at the superintendent's table, and his name was Mr. Matthews. Mr. Matthews began the serving as a metal pitcher of milk was poured for each child. You can have coffee if you like, offered Mr. Matthews. The big boys bring it around to the staff. Well, thank you, but I believe I'll have milk with the hot soup. Well, let me warn you, our milk is not fresh. It's powdered milk, shipped out of Seattle. And if the boys do a good job of mixing it, it's okay. Otherwise, the milk may taste a little different to you. Oh, I've never tasted powdered milk. I'll give it a try. Well, it certainly looked like milk. I ventured a sip. To my surprise, the temperature of the milk was cool, not cold. And in place of a rich, fresh milk flavor, my palate had to endure a watered-down, powdery, artificial taste of something akin to milk. I looked around the table to see how the children were accepting this imposter in the milk pitcher. Several already had white mustaches on their upper lips, and little tongues were trying to erase them. One would have thought they had just partaken of something very refreshing. Well, obviously, their taste buds had not been pampered with rich, fresh milk. Mr. Matthews, she doesn't want her soup. Can I have hers? Asked a little girl. May I? He corrected. No. Neva needs to eat her soup so she can go back to school this afternoon and be a good student. You finish what you have and you can probably have seconds. I looked down at the hot bowl of soup still steaming. My compliments to the cook to be able to serve this many people and still have the soup piping hot. How many people are in here? Oh, about 100 when we are all here. Mrs. Eccles has lots of help with the older boys and girls. I don't like moose, announced Neva with an expression to match her pronouncement. Did you find some moose in that soup, Neva? He asked. Yes, it's yucky. No, it isn't. That's good for you. You eat it. Reluctantly, Neva went back to her soup, and I should tell you here that Neva had been at the home only about maybe 9 or 10 days before I got there, so she was one of the new ones. Does it taste like beef? I asked, picking up my soup spoon. Oh, well, it depends on how it's fixed. Some folks think it does. I tried the soup. Again, my taste buds rebelled. It was undoubtedly the worst soup I had ever had in my life. What do you think? Mr. Matthews asked. I think it tastes different. It certainly doesn't taste like beef. Well, it's probably the wild taste that you aren't used to. I looked across the table to see how Neva was doing. Muttered in a low audible, I heard her final critique. It's yucky. But like a trooper, she was eating it, and I knew that too was to be my destiny, albeit without the luxury of even one little yuck. At least none uttered aloud. We're lucky, Betty Jane, said Mr. Matthews, getting to his feet to dismiss the group. The Fish and Wildlife Department give us hundreds of pounds of moose every year. It sure helps on the meat budget. Poor Neva, was all I could comment. and to myself, not to mention Miss Epps. Well, later, I had a taste of another wild thing. There was a porcupine chewing on the asphalt on the foundation under the Seaboys' dorm. I had never seen a porcupine and was curious. I was on my hands and knees peering under the building at the foundation along with my boys and some other staff when a young man on the staff called to me and asked, "Hey, Betty Jane, know how to cook porcupine?" "Afraid not." "Oh, I thought all Southern girls knew how to fry chicken." And that's how I got my first and last taste of porcupine. Now, I know everybody loves a story of romance, and there is one in here that begins on page 26. But I'm sure you'd rather read that alone. And if so, my daughter Heather, here, one of the front tables, will be back at the book table here during intermission and see that you get a book. That is, if you'd like to have one.
Thank you so much, Betty. Gosh, if I had known, I would have had the guys bring the moose out for you. We do have some here. Thank you, though, really. What a lovely story.